Welcome to Asia Outlook. I'm Melody and I'm here to report the top stories from around Asia. A special court has sentenced the former president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, to death for treason. A government law officer said the 76-year-old, currently on self-imposed exile in Dubai, was found guilty of subverting the constitution of Pakistan. Musharraf seized power in a coup in 1990 and later ruled the country as president. He's been on trial since 2014 for treason due to an incident in 2007 which swore the leader to declare a state of emergency and defend the constitution. Iran continues to insist it will not renegotiate a new nuclear deal with Washington, even if the US and Europe intensify sanctions. CGTN Jack Barton has more.
Iran breached enriched uranium restrictions this year following Donald Trump's decision to pull out of the nuclear agreement struck in 2018. A further acceleration of the program is expected in January.
The Iranians, for over a year, they continue to abide by their commitments. Now they're gradually decreasing their commitments to the deal in order to put pressure on the Europeans to change policy.
Iran wants Europe to resist US sanctions, as well as find a way to help Tehran bypass restrictions on oil sales and financial transactions.
The main point here is that the U.S. is not for a conflict resolution. Even Obama administration, they were just looking for containment of Iran's power.
Trump's decision to exit the 2015 deal has emboldened hardliners.
We're just a chance of death to America, England, Israel, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But perhaps the loudest chant was death to the Iranian political reformers.
Reformers and even moderates have clearly been undermined.
So they gave Rouhani this agenda, actually, to give it a try, to talk to the United States. But now everybody has come up with the same result, that talking and negotiations with the United States is meaningless.
There is also a growing belief here that the US will not resort to war if the nuclear program accelerates.
After the Iranians shot down the American drone over Iranian airspace and the Americans did not retaliate, many began to recognize that the Americans have come to the recognition that war with Iran is not something they can win.
Contained war with Iran is impossible. Any kind of military conflict would spiral out of control into a full-scale war, and that's something that the U.S. would never want.
Which means 2020 is likely to be another flashpoint year for Iran and the US, no matter which way parliamentary polls here or a presidential election in America.
A new international organization has been established to promote esports. The Global Esports Federation was launched with the backing of Chinese multinational conglomerate Tencent in Singapore. It is planning to host its own flagship international games by the end of 2020. CGTN's Muriel Liu reports.
In a considerable boost to esports worldwide, the Global Esports Federation, or GEF, was launched in Singapore with the aim of expanding and regulating the industry. The organization also aims to govern the entire esports ecosystem and win international recognition for it.
At the moment, the sports is going so fast, and a lot has been misunderstood about esports. We want to reach out to the esports community and say, look, we want to be a voice for them. We want to address what's in the ecosystem. We want to bring legitimacy. We want to make sure that values of esports are positive.
Chinese multinational conglomerate and one of the leading gaming companies, Tencent, has come on board as the founding global partner.
Today you see that board members include many major figures from traditional sports organizations. This is good for GEF as it makes it an effective platform to promote communication and marketing for the esports industry.
Esports have seen a meteoric rise globally, with the overall value set to cross the $1.1 billion mark. China has been one of the biggest markets.
Over the past few years, China has become one of the biggest esports markets worldwide. We have many competitions and many players. We have built a comprehensive ecosystem, including broadcasting, clubs, and commentary, and we're planning to train players for the future.
Just a few years ago, online gaming was still seen as a casual hobby, but with the money and sponsorship pouring in and the setting up of a global governing body like the GEF, esports is gaining credibility as a recognized professional sport and a respectable career choice. Miro Lu, CGTN, Singapore.
The Seoul Metropolitan Government set up an underground solar-powered garden at Seoul's Jonggat Station last week. Let's take a look. India's Citizenship Amendment Bill provides fast-track citizenship for non-Muslim immigrants, but it has caused controversy for excluding people based on their religion. Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has strongly condemned the bill, saying it was driven by a toxic mix of extremist Hinduvat ideology. Bangladesh Foreign Minister Abdul Momen said the bill could weaken India's historic character as a secular nation. The UN Human Rights Office has called for a revision, saying it is fundamentally discriminatory in nature. Opponents of the law have been holding protests in the country's northeast. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe canceled his visit to India. The United States, UK, and Canada also issued travel alerts to their citizens. Stephen Biegun, the U.S. Special Envoy for the DPRK, has met South Korean President Moon Jae-in in Seoul. His 3-day visit comes after the Democratic People's Republic of Korea claimed they had carried out a crucial test at a satellite launch site. Biegun has urged Pyongyang to respond to Washington's offers of dialogue and has dismissed a year-end deadline from leader Kim Jong-un. CGTN Jack Parton has more.
The 3-day visit by Stephen Biegun, the U.S. point man on denuclearization diplomacy, comes amid rising tensions in the wake of a DPRK rocket engine test this month, which provoked a warning from U.S. President Donald Trump that Pyongyang could lose everything if Kim Jong-un continues with what Trump described as hostile acts. On Monday, Biegun met with his South Korean counterpart Lee Do-hoon, as well as with President Moon Jae-in, for discussions aimed at bringing Pyongyang back to the negotiating table as the DPRK ramps up pressure ahead of a New Year deadline it has set for Washington to offer much greater concessions. Biegun said the US had no deadline for nuclear talks and offered to hold direct dialogue with DPRK officials at the demilitarized zone. However, Biegun also warned the DPRK not to conduct any major provocations in the coming days.
Let me speak directly to our counterparts in North Korea. It is time for us to do our jobs. Let's get this done. We are here, and you know how to reach us. We are fully aware of the strong potential for North Korea to conduct a major provocation in the days ahead. To say the least, such an action will be most unhelpful in achieving a lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula.
Pyongyang has conducted 2 tests this month at a recently reopened satellite and missile engine test site. Security analysts say preparations could be underway for the launch of either a long-range nuclear-capable missile or a slightly less provocative satellite rocket launch that would nonetheless possess dual-use technology potentially capable of striking the United States. The last direct talks between Washington and Pyongyang were held last October in Sweden. They broke up amid acrimony, with DPRK officials complaining the US was unwilling to offer new concessions. Pyongyang has warned Washington to prepare for a Christmas gift, saying that the contents of that gift will depend on the outcome of diplomacy in the weeks ahead.
U.S. aerospace manufacturer Boeing has temporarily suspended production of the 737 MAX airplane starting from January. The company said the suspension was due to certification moving into 2020, quote to quote. No layoffs or furloughs are expected, the company detailed.
Boeing says it will temporarily suspend production of its 737 MAX jets in January. The company says it will focus on delivering the 400 jets it has kept in storage and continue to pay its workers despite the stop in production. The decision comes after the Federal Aviation Administration delayed the jet's return to service before 2020. Last week, the aviation regulator accused Boeing of pursuing an unrealistic timeline for the aircraft's return to the sky.
A local official confirmed at least 4 people, including a 6-year-old girl, have died and several others injured after a 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck near Mindanao in the Philippines on Sunday. President Xi Jinping, also General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, Central Committee, and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, attended the commissioning ceremony for China's first domestically built aircraft carrier, the Shandong, on Tuesday afternoon.
Another first for China. The Shandong is only the nation's second ever aircraft carrier and first such ship fully designed and built domestically. It was commissioned Tuesday afternoon at a naval base in Sanya, Hainan Province. President Xi Jinping took part in the commissioning ceremony. He also met members of the Chinese Navy's carrier force and representatives from organizations involved in the project, acknowledging their achievements and encouraging them to continue making new accomplishments. All told, 5,000 personnel attended the ceremony. Before the ship's commissioning, the Liaoning was China's only carrier. A former Soviet-era vessel, it was extensively revamped and refitted at the Dalian shipyard in Liaoning Province. Tuesday's commissioning saw China become only the 4th country worldwide to operate multiple carriers, following the United States, United Kingdom, and Italy. Lu Sirui, CGTN.
Japanese Defense Minister Taro Kono is visiting Beijing in the first trip by a Japanese defense chief to China in 10 years. He is expected to discuss security cooperation and lay the groundwork for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's upcoming trip to China. And on Wednesday, Taro Kono held talks with his Chinese counterpart, Wei Fengshih, and Xu Qilong, the vice chairman of China's Central Military Commission. The Chinese officials said that Beijing is willing to work with Japan to safeguard international and regional peace and stability. They said both sides should probably manage their differences to build healthy security relations. Taro Kono stressed that Japan is ready to improve defense exchanges and cooperation with China. This visit comes after China commissioned its second aircraft carrier on Tuesday. The United States insists that its maximum pressure policy against Iran does not target ordinary people or those in need of medical treatment. But Iranian doctors tell a different story, where financial sanctions block supply chains and dramatically drive up prices, creating deadly shortages. CGTN Jack Barton has more from Tehran.
The women's ward in Iran's largest cancer hospital. A 2-month admission wait means beds are always full. Conditions here were already bad enough, but doctors warn sanctions have led to a critical shortage of key drugs needed for chemotherapy and the treatment of leukemia.
If we don't inject a drug to that tumor, tumor is progress, metastatic, and a lot of bad things for that patient. And drop lead to death.
Medicine and food are supposed to be exempt from the sanctions, reinstated by the US after it pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal last year. The problem is most financial transactions with Iran are banned.
We have money to buy drugs, but they do not accept our money.
The sanctions are not just affecting cancer patients. General hospitals like this one are also feeling the strain. Iran imports only about 3% of its medications, but they represent about a third in total value of all drugs sold here. Doctors at this Jewish charity hospital say the drugs are usually specialized and highly valued.
For example, in our operation rooms, the drugs that we now need are for anesthesia. It doesn't make any difference what his or her illness is. They have to be anesthetized. The drug is in shortage. We are facing intense problems acquiring it.
Sanctions are supposed to target Iran's ruling elite.
If child of a man in the power needs some medication, he would buy it by dollar from Turkey, from UAE, from Europe, even from USA, and transfer it to Iran from with airplane. The pressure is on the people from mid to low socioeconomic class.
Back at the cancer hospital, a new wing is being built to help shorten the wait list. Though financial restrictions means new equipment cannot be easily acquired, a task that may prove even harder if some European nations press ahead with the threat to make sanctions even tougher. Jack Barton, CGTN, Tehran.
Delegations from Japan and South Korea have met in Tokyo to discuss Japan's export restrictions, which are at the center of a trade dispute between the two countries. It's the first meeting by senior officials since Japan tightened export controls on 3 high-tech materials to South Korea in July and removed the country from its white list of countries with fast-track trade status. South Korea nearly ended its intelligence sharing pact with Tokyo last month, but it changed its mind and renewed the agreement just hours before it was due to expire. This is Asia Outlook, broadcasting live from Myanmar International Radio. On FM, make sure you catch us on 96.1 FM in Yangon, 96.5 in Mandalay, and 96.7 in Naypyidaw. You can also download MI Radio app on both iOS and Android devices for your own convenience. Thousands of refugees in Indonesia are still in shelters, waiting to be resettled. The country has seen a surge of refugees from Afghanistan and several African countries that are hoping to reach their final destination, usually Australia. CGTN's Silkinia Aluwala has the story.
Hassan has been a refugee in Indonesia for more than 3 years. His family left their hometown of Afghanistan to escape conflict and to find a better future for his children. He has been seeking support from UNHCR and other refugee organizations, but that has proven to be challenging.
And I applied to teach as a volunteer and also some getting some support from them. But I was in a waiting list for 2 years. Finally, I was rejected. They rejected me. Also, I asked UNHCR to provide me some opportunity, but I haven't received any single support from them or any opportunity from them.
Hassan continues to live in uncertainty. He is just one among thousands of refugees that currently reside in this camp.
We are not sure that we can remain here. This is a transit country for us. But if there is any solution, the government of Indonesia sign something or they provide us those rights which is provided to any other nationals of this Indonesia, just like count us as their own nation, so we will welcome them.
Najib has also been awaiting settlement. His ideal destination is Australia, a common country for many refugees that are still stuck in limbo in Indonesia.
Well, my hope is going to go Australia, because I believe Australia is a good place for vulnerable people like me, who are not so educated and who doesn't know a lot of skills and stuff like that, and so I can find some job for myself there and also a safe place to live peacefully.
Refugees like Hassan and Najib still rely on organizations to provide them with basic necessities such as food, water, and medical aid. One of them is Public Safe House under the Social Affairs Ministry. They mainly provide safe accommodations for refugees in Indonesia. But spaces are limited, and that poses a huge challenge as well.
The reason why we don't take many refugees is because we have certain barriers. Sometimes it's language, medical, or even food. And for the refugees, it's very different from the local occupants that reside here. This sometimes causes a gap between foreigners and locals who live in a safe house.
Despite Hassan and Najib's uncertainties, the growing community of refugees in the camps provide a small sense of hope to those who are continuously in search of positivity while still in transit. Silkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
The largest Chinese land festival in the United States, the Happy Panda Festival, has kicked off in New York City. Over 120 lantern installations are on display. Let's take a look. The United States has once again tightened sanctions against Iran after withdrawing from the agreement to limit that country's nuclear capabilities. And there have been some unlikely victims in an unlikely place, Malaysia. Although Malaysia enjoys good ties with Iran, Malaysian banks have been closing accounts of Iranians legally living and working in the country. CGTN's Ryan Meltzer reports from Kuala Lumpur.
Tens of thousands of Iranians live and work in Malaysia. They own restaurants and do trading, are students, engineers, and IT experts. Amin Oroji completed his PhD at University of Malaya and works as a data scientist. But his local bank abruptly closed his account.
I received a letter along with a check with the balance of my account. And as you see here, the title is Prohibited Countries. I'm working here, I have visa, I'm paying tax. I'm here legally. Why I have to receive this kind of letter? Just feel upset.
Many Iranians here, as well as people from Syria, Yemen, and some other countries, are reported to have got similar letters.
In the letter, they just regret to inform me that they are going to close my account, and there is no reason here. I cannot see any reason in this letter. But I believe the reason is because I'm Iranian. It's against human rights. Just think about that. You are working in a country, you want to pay tax, you want to pay rental, you want to pay doing grocery shop, you want to do anything. You need having a bank account.
Local banks appear to be trying to comply with tightened US sanctions and even go further, despite Malaysia enjoying friendly ties with Iran. Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad said Malaysia faces strong pressure and threats from certain quarters. He described bullying by powerful forces and said people could guess who he was referring to.
I'm working here for 9 years. I pay tax for 9 years. So, I'm feeling depressed about that.
The Iranian embassy says it is working to resolve the issue. The individual banks, Malaysian Central Bank and Banking Association, have declined to comment. Ryan Meltzer, CGTN, Kuala Lumpur.
During this year's annual conference with Russian and international media, Russian President Vladimir Putin warned of serious consequences if Russia and the U.S. allow the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty to expire.
I've already said it, and I want to say it again. Up until the end of the year, we're ready simply to take and extend the existing START 3 agreement. To all our suggestions, there has not been a single response. And if there is no START 3, there will be absolutely nothing in the world to hold back the arms race.
As the world's second largest producer of plastic waste, Indonesia has been struggling to manage its waste problem for years. The Interceptor, a prototype device for cleaning water bodies, is currently going through trial operation in Jakarta's rivers. It could massively support the government's goal to reduce marine waste drastically by 2030.
This could be the solution to Indonesia's growing plastic waste issue. The Interceptor, developed by Dutch entrepreneur Boyan Slat, is designed to prevent waste from reaching the oceans. This specific device is called the Interceptor 001, a prototype designed for Jakarta's rivers.
I think the work with the plastic interceptors, the government with the ocean cleanup, I think is one of the initiatives that we can do as an Indonesia to clean up the rivers and the oceans. But the important thing is that we have to make sure that we can do something also in the upstream level, so we can to make sure not only clean up the rivers, but we have to make sure that we can stop the plastic waste come into the river in the first place.
A research conducted by the Ocean Cleanup found that 80% of plastic waste in the sea comes from 1,000 of the most polluted rivers in the world, and more than 80 of them are in Indonesia.
Indonesia is working towards a vision to reduce plastic waste by at least 70% by 2030. This device could help them reach that goal faster. It can remove up to 2 tons of plastic waste in just one day.
So far, during its trial period, the Interceptor has reduced the amount of waste that goes into the sea by at least 60%.
The plastic problems in Indonesia is like a very massive. We are in the critical situations for now. For example, maybe as we know, Indonesia is nominated as the second worst plastic polluters in the world's oceans. And also, I think if we take a look at Jakarta, Indonesia capital city, we can produce like 7,000 until 8,000 tons waste per day.
Most of the plastic waste found in the city's rivers are from bottles or shopping bags.
If we cannot handle this one properly, and the plastic will become, the compost will become microplastic, and microplastic become problem. It's going to harm the people.
This invention is not only stopping waste from reaching the oceans, it's also helping to clean up Jakarta's rivers and canals, an important part of waste management in Indonesia. Sulkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
And that's all we have for today's Asia Outlook on MRI Radio. Thank you for being with us. I'm Melody. We'll be back next week. Until next time.